This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We are glad to have you with us. Well, this past week, the Arkansas legislature was called into a special session by Governor Asa Hutchinson. The purpose was to potentially alter a mask mandate ban, a new state law that had gone into effect earlier this year, in the effort to give local control to school boards so that they might have another tool to protect children under the age of 12 as school starts back this fall. In the end, the state policy was not changed. That was after about 3 days of some pretty heated debate. I caught up with State Senator Jim Hendren, independent of I-Gravette, Arkansas, founder of Common Ground, Arkansas, to get his take on what he just experienced. Let's begin with the special session ends on a Friday. There really was not anything achieved in terms of policy changes to the mask mandate ban. This is something that you put in a tweet right before you guys adjourned. Here we go. Prayers we do right. We didn't. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think the reason the governor called the special session, and I supported the call of the special session, was because our schools are getting ready to face a crisis. We've already seen it with Marion, the first school district that opens up, ends up with 700 or 800 people in quarantine, and you're going to put entire years at risk. And I just don't know that our students and our staff and our faculty can afford to lose another school year of in-person learning. And it was so important that we do everything we can to make sure that students are able to continue to have in-person learning and that the school boards have all the tools they need to make sure that happens. Well, we didn't do that. And that's why, I think that was the right thing to do. The conservative thing to do is to let local decisions be made by the local governing authorities, whether it be the school board or the city council. We ripped all that away and made all those decisions in a one-size-fits-all solution at Little Rock that gives school boards no authority to deal with the emergency that I think all the physicians tell us is coming. So that's what I meant by we could have done better.
You heard the argument during this legislative session, and you've heard it outside of it as well too, that parents can require their children to mask up if they want to, that option is still out there for them. That may be the only option for some now. Why is that argument does not carry weight to you? Why does it need to be a local school board decision versus parental decisions?
Well, it's similar to the discussion that we began to hear, and there was an attempt to pass legislation that would tell local businesses the policies that they had to take on vaccine or on masks. Certainly parents have the right to raise their children as they see fit, but when they choose to put them in a public school setting, they have to choose to follow by the safety guidelines that are established by the public school board. I spent 15 years on a school board. It was our job to make sure the playgrounds were safe, to make sure that the lockers did not have things in it that shouldn't be in it. Just like parents couldn't decide that it was okay for their child to take firearms or to take drugs to school. You can also say that the school board has the authority to put measures in place that don't just affect, because this doesn't just affect your child, it affects the safety of other people's children.
Senator Trent Garner was on a different side of the issue than you were. He tweeted at the end of the, Thursday session, "I told y'all we are winning. The days of big government mandates over the will of the people are done. We are fighting back. Welcome to a new, better day in our state." What did Senator Garner win?
I don't know. I think he may need to go visit Children's Hospital or may need to go visit any of the hospitals in our state and see the crisis that we're in. And if winning is making it harder to empty those hospitals and to restore people's health and to protect people, that's not any winning I want to be a part of. So I don't think it was a win. And it's interesting that he says, end of big government mandates. This is a government mandate from Little Rock to every school district in the state. We took away authority that local school districts had and made it the law with a big government mandate from Little Rock. So again, I guess it's in the eye of who you consider to be big government.
Some of those folks that were on the other side of the issue from you might consider Judge Tim Fox's decision on Friday to be a liberal judge making a big government decision too.
That's right.
We can pick and choose who we think is a big government mandate, I suppose. He issued a temporary injunction on Act 1002, which is the mask mandate ban. Did you agree with the judge's decision on that? Do you think that there are constitutional problems with Act 1002?
Well, I always hesitate to practice law because I'm an engineer by training, and I guess I have made a few laws, and I try to find people smarter than me to tell me about the constitutional issues. But I do think he made a very solid point in the fact that if you do not give this same ability to protect kids in public schools as we have in private schools, there's some issues there with fairness and equal protection. So I think, again, that just points to the fact that we don't need to be making a one size fits all, particularly when we only do it on one segment of the population. So I'm glad that he issued the restraining order. I hope that the bill is declared unconstitutional because I think it is a bill that is bad public health policy. I'm not, nor is the governor calling for statewide mask mandates or anything else. But what we are calling for is that we give local entities the ability to protect themselves.
I don't have to explain to you what you witnessed at the state capitol this week. It went on during the regular session as well, too. A very divided electorate out there, a very vocal group of citizens on all sides of issues show up and voice their concerns to legislators. Some of it done with some dignity, some of it done with nothing but, a little bit more vulgar approach to some things. Is this genie out of the bottle and can't be put back in? I think this is the basis of your Common Ground Arkansas calls for more civil dialogue. But from what you witnessed this week, are you optimistic or pessimistic?
I think I'm realistic that we've got a lot of work to do. I told one of my freshman Senate colleagues, we were talking about that issue, about the polarization, about the incivility, about the lack of professionalism. And I say, I just wish so many of you who are new could go back and see what it was like 20 years ago when I was in the House, or even 10 years ago when I began the Senate. It does not have to be this way, and it has not always been this way. But we've got a loud group, an extreme group, who is mimicking what they see in DC. They're mimicking what they see successful in primary politics, and they're bringing that to the Capitol. But I am optimistic in the sense that I continue to hear from people all over the state that that's not what they want. They want people who will solve problems. They want people who will be grown-ups and fix things that need to be fixed, instead of continuing just to pander and make bold statements that really have no impact other than to fire up people on social media.
Just to be clear, you see it on both sides of the political spectrum?
Well, I mean, obviously, I'm going to tell you that clearly most of the anger and most of the extremist stuff that we're seeing is coming from the right. But the biggest reason for that is because the right controls 75% of the legislature. I think if it were flipped, we would be seeing some of the same pressures from the left that we're seeing from the right. But there's no question that most of this extremism and most of the things that you're talking about, the incivility, the lack of professionalism, I see a lot more of that coming from people who just seem to be angry on the right.
Last question for you. Give me an update on Common Ground Arkansas, where things stand with the organization. And I guess I'll ask the proverbial, are you still thinking about running for governor question?
Well, I'll do the first one. The second one first is everybody thinks about it, and I'm still thinking about it. And I haven't made a final decision because I am focusing and spending most of my effort now on Common Ground. One of my kids texted me and said, this governor's race isn't nearly as big a deal as what you can do with Common Ground. And I really believe that. We are, as you know, we've put our board together. We have begun to travel the state and try to communicate our message with others. We've had good success in raising funds. We're beginning to communicate. I'm excited about something that we're rolling out this week, is I had about a 30-minute video conversation with Representative Lee Johnson, who's also an emergency room physician, about what the situation is in hospitals and about why there is vaccine hesitancy. And that's part of what I think Common Ground is about, is finding people to work across the aisle to talk about real problems and solutions. So the reception's been great. I know that it's a heavy lift, just like this session was a heavy lift, but I hope it turns out better than this session did on success.
That's State Senator Jim Hendren, independent of I-Gravette and founder of Common Ground Arkansas. You can catch our full interview at talkbusiness.net. When we return, KATV's Maureen Glisovic with her analysis of the special session, some of the legislative and legal repercussions. Also, later in the program, Dr. Chad Rogers, pediatrician and chief medical officer for the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care, with some tips on what parents can do to make their children safer as we head back to school. Stay tuned.